Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Andrea Course, principal at Shell Ventures. Andrea, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel extremely honored to be part of this series. I work for Shell Ventures, which is the venture and capital arm for Shell. My journey is quite an interesting one and quite long, so I'll try to make it short and summarize. But for the audience who don't know me, I'm originally from Colombia, South America. My background is purely technical. So I have a degree in physics engineering. And then after I graduated from physics engineering, I decided to get a master's in aerospace engineering because my dream was always to be an astronaut. So I moved from Colombia to the US. I got my degrees and I thought that's all I needed to get a job at NASA and work in aerospace. But to my surprise, that was not enough. I realized that I was born in the wrong country and I couldn't get a job not only at NASA, but nowhere. No aerospace company would hire me because I didn't have a green card. I couldn't get security clearances. I just could not get a job in the aerospace industry. So here I was at the time around 20 years old with a master's degree. I'm like, I'm a rocket scientist. Somebody must want me. I had already moved everything I had to Houston because this is where aerospace happened. And I quickly had to realize, okay, what am I going to do now? I went to every single aerospace company and none of them would hire me, even though I had like great interviews and they were like, yeah, you're perfect. We want you. As soon as they wanted to see my papers, it's like, yeah, sorry, we can't sponsor you. We can't hire you. Being in Houston, this is the capital for three things: aerospace, medical, and oil and gas. So I was lucky enough to go to a job fair and there was a picture of a subsea field. And I don't know if you've ever seen one, but it's like dark, just pitch black with yellow things on top. And it really did look like it was in outer space. So I was like, oh, what's that? That looks interesting. Maybe I could work here. And funny enough, they hired me and I started designing subsea production equipment. So instead of sending things to space, I was sending things to the bottom of the ocean. It was actually a quite interesting transition of really stretching my knowledge and what I knew at that point. I started working for a company called Cameron that was later acquired by Schlumberger. And I worked for Schlumberger for almost 13 years. So my career started as an engineer, but I quickly transitioned into new technology development, new product development, and finding technologies outside of Schlumberger that we could bring in. So that's when I first started working with startups. And I absolutely loved it. After a few years, I decided to get my MBA because when I was going to meetings with senior executives, I did not know what they were talking about. Somebody actually recommended I'd watch a YouTube video about why women don't move up in the corporate world as fast as men. And like the main thing that we were lacking or that we are lacking as women is business acumen. But it's a great video. I can send the link afterward.
Add it to the YouTube comment afterwards.
Perfect. So it really goes through, you can be as smart as you want, you can have a great network, but if you don't show that you have business acumen, it's going to be very hard for you to move up. So I went back to school while I was working full time and I got my MBA. And when I got my MBA, I was lucky enough that I was already working very closely with the ventures team at Schlumberger. And there was an opportunity because someone had left. So I got a job doing ventures at Schlumberger, which is really when I started learning about the venturing world. And after a couple of years working with them, I was offered a position at Shell. And the reason that I changed positions was really, I loved my job at Schlumberger. I have nothing bad to say about them. I really did love my boss and my colleagues, but I wanted to have a bigger impact in the energy transition. And I thought that moving to one of the big energy companies would give me these opportunities. So that's kind of how I went from doing rocket science to venture capital. And it's funny that to me, because a lot of people, and you mentioned that a lot of the audience is going to hear about how do I get into venture capital? This is a question that I get all the time. So much that I wrote an article that I posted on my LinkedIn, just explaining main three things that I did to get to where I am today and how I was able to pivot. Because I think a lot of people try to see a straight line from where they are to where they want to be. And it's never a straight line, right? You're going to have to go in a weird pattern and learn new things and then go back and then go back up. And so it's definitely interesting to see all the different backgrounds that there are in venture capital. So that's my story.
I like the rocket analogy where today you're looking to invest in rocket and entrepreneurs who are going to have really meaningful projects that will scale impact. But I have to ask, what are the three things that you wrote about that really was important for this pivot?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the first one is be ready to pivot, right? Be ready to understand, okay, what are the things that I know how to do well today that I can apply to my next job? What are the skills that I'm lacking? And then go figure out how you can get them. And the third one is network, get in the circles. So do the job before you get the job. I think those were the three things that I wrote.
Very nice. And how do you recommend networking when you're not yet in corporate venturing? You may be in a job as an engineer or as a finance person, but you're not in touch with the ecosystem. What would be your recommendation?
So I can tell you what my story was. So I was working as an engineer at the time. Say I was working as a product manager. My job was to look for electrification of subsea systems. I was helping the ventures team with opportunities that came not on the venture side, but on the technical side. And I would make myself available. And I said, if anything comes through where you think I can help, right? Identify, could we use, for example, wave energy for my project? I volunteer for all these things that open up. So you could give a lot before you get, right? I think the more you give, the more you get. And when I did it, in my mind, I wasn't thinking, oh, I want to get into venture, so I better talk to these people. I think networking has to be really genuine. And I think you just really have to help people just because that's what we're here for. That's my motto, right? I'm here to see how I can help others. There's plenty of opportunities to volunteer. I'm sure every ecosystem is different, but for example, here in Houston, you have great accelerators and incubators that are always looking for mentors, that are always looking for people to come and help with their startups that need help with their pitch. Everybody has something that they can give. So make sure that you can articulate what that is. Make sure that you can then give that, and perhaps that will open the door for you.
It's a very good golden nugget. So your technical background was, in a way, helping you to get into corporate venturing because you were giving technical due diligence support for the CVC. How do you think your technical background is influencing you positively or negatively as an investor?
I would say it's definitely positive. I like to think it's positive, right? Because one of the good things of VC is that we can look at pretty much anything, and we'll get to talk about more into what Shell actually invests in. But having that technical background allows me to understand, is this a real problem? Could this be scaled up? How easy would it be to implement? And coming from that background, I can tell right away, oh, this is a winner, or this is going to take years before, or maybe they don't really understand the sales cycles that they're going to be facing, or maybe they're too optimistic, or maybe this is a great technology disruption. So I think it definitely helps having that technical background. But again, what I think the key is to make good investments is, in my opinion, having a diverse background. So not just people with technical backgrounds, but then having people with different backgrounds, right? With sales backgrounds, with banking backgrounds, people that would look at the deal with different lenses. That's what really makes a good deal. If the whole team had the same background that I did, then we would be making horrible deals. I think we make each other better.
The way I like to think about it is if everyone thinks the same as you may have 5 people, but you only have 1 brain.
Exactly. So diversity is not only the right thing to do, but I always like to say is the smart thing to do, because by having a diverse team, you really look at the different angles of a deal and somebody might see something that you have missed.
So let's touch on diversity, which I know you care a lot. And there are a lot of ways to think about diversity, but I want to start with the diversity of thoughts and then to expand beyond that. How do you look at recruitment when you think about diversity to make sure that someone who's joining the team really adds something more versus being the same as someone else? How do you do that?
It's a really good question. And the short answer is I personally don't recruit people for our team. We have our senior management that do that, but they are very much aware that this is something that we need to do. That is the right thing to do. So there are a lot of programs. I feel very happy with the way that Shell does diversity. If you look at our team, so we have over 30 investment professionals all around the world. It's a very diverse team, not only of thought, backgrounds, but also race and sex and religion. So we are a very diverse team. So how do you go about it? I think you need to be very much mindful. That's what you want to create. You have to create a culture where people feel included. I have actually looked at places that everybody looks the same, right? And there's no one that looks like me, right? I'm less likely to want to work in a place like that than if I say, okay, this team is kind of different, could fit in. So it's easier to see yourself in the team when you see that there's people that look like you. Same with senior management, right? And I think there's still a lot of work that can be done. There's a lot of room for improvement, but we really are trying. Right. So there's a fine line between making sure that you get the right candidates with the right talent and the right qualifications, because you also don't want to feel like, oh, they just hired me because I'm a woman. So you don't want to be just the one woman in the team and they don't listen to you. They just hired you because they had to check that box. So it's something that I think corporations and everybody's still trying to figure out. Not to get political, but it's what's happening in the US with the Supreme Court nominee, right? People are like, oh, why does it have to be a Black woman? And it might be the most qualified Black woman in the US, but people are going to complain. So it's a sensitive topic.
What I find useful is not to rush recruitment. You take your time to have a very good pipeline of candidates, but you should choose really good candidates.
Yeah. And the thing is, there are plenty of candidates that are qualified, that are diverse. And I think that's what more companies are seeing. So it's all about making sure that you are taking care of those biases that are in most cases unconscious. So once you take out that bias, and there are ways where you can, for example, write a job description that is not gender biased. So doing things like that, then just making sure that you have a process that's almost blind to these biases until the very last minute allows you to not only get the best candidate, but to get the diversity that you're looking for.
You remind me of some things I'm going to give the tip today. Every job description we write, there is a tool on the web where you can actually see if it's gender bias one way or another, depending on the word being used. And anything which is more combative, for example, or even champion or anything like this. So we go through this on the website and then we can correct the job descriptions to be much more gender balanced. So that's the information I would give, because otherwise you filter even people who may be the right fit, but they don't recognize themselves in the job description.
Exactly. And again, this is a topic that I'm fascinated by, but there are tons of studies about how women, when they read a job description before they apply, they have to check every single thing on that job description, or at least 95%. When a man reads the same job description, if they fit around 50% of those job requirements, they'll be like, oh my God, this is the job for me. I'm great for this. So it's a way that our brains are wired that makes it different. But the reason why it's so important as well to have the right team making the decisions is because you can see on the other side, when you look at the amount of money that is going to minority founders, it's astonishing, right? So less than 2% of the total funding in venture capital goes to women. And when we look at Black women or African American women, it's less than 1%, it's 0.02%, which again, you might say maybe there aren't that many women founders, or maybe there aren't that many, opportunities, but it's impossible. Like, I know for a fact that there are a lot of really good companies that are being led by females. And not only that, there are studies that show that women founded teams, or teams that are at least 50% female, perform better. Their businesses bring more value to the investors. So then again, is like, what's happening? And in my opinion is we just don't have enough women making the decisions, right? And you tend to like people that are like you. You tend to connect to people that look like you. Therefore, you trust them and you're going to invest in people that are similar to you. So if 98% of VC firms hire the same usual suspects, that's where the money is going to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's where the recruitment of the investing team really matters. That's what you're saying. If they're the one who are going to make decisions, if they already have a bias, hopefully unconscious, but still a bias, that influences who they decide to invest in.
Exactly. Which is why we have to fix the problem, not only where the money goes, but also who's making the decisions on where that money is going to.
Let's talk a little about inclusion, which is a different topic in itself. First, on the corporate VC side, how do you think we can make the team recruitment and the ecosystem itself more inclusive?
That's a great question. And I love the fact that you've actually separated it, because it's one thing to be diverse and it is a very different thing to be inclusive. I think that's even harder to do. But I definitely think that, again, you need to be very much aware of the issue. So unless you know that there is a problem, you can't solve it. So the first step is to realize, okay, maybe we have a diverse team, but we're not being inclusive enough. Everybody needs to have the same value in a team. Everybody needs to have a voice. Now, how do you do that? Everybody is different, and there are ways that people communicate where they feel more comfortable. So making sure that you are providing different tools for different people, for different types of communication, it's important, right? But then again, you need to be aware that's an issue, and you need to be mindful that is being done. So for example, when you are in a meeting, in a room full of people, and it doesn't have to be minorities, but sometimes some people just don't feel like they can give their opinion because everybody's going to think, oh, that's just a stupid question. So-and-so wasn't paying attention. But what happens is you miss out on that point of view. So maybe thinking about, okay, how can we provide mechanisms for everybody to have a voice? Is it maybe an email? Is it maybe pre-read? Is it maybe we do a follow-up, or we do a one-on-one afterwards with whoever doesn't feel like speaking up? But it's providing a space that feels secure, where everybody can have a voice. In my opinion, the key to inclusion.
And in a way, you can do well on diversity. If you don't do well on the inclusion, you miss the points.
Yeah, because most people will actually realize, okay, this is a diverse team, but my voice doesn't count. And then they will leave. And you see that happen all the time.
Very nice. Can you point out to one investment you're the most proud about and why?
No, I always get this question and I always give people the same answer. Which one of your kids do you love more? You can't answer that question. Like, when I make an investment, I take it very seriously. They're like my babies. So every company I'm involved with that I have ever invested or worked with, even when I was at Schlumberger, they're all like my babies. So it would be unfair to them for me to say, oh, I like this one better. I am extremely proud of all of them in different ways. I think for me as an investor, what is the most rewarding thing is to see them go from an idea or a really tiny team to an IPO or an exit, right? And know that I had a little bit to do with that. So my answer would be, I really love to see the success stories. There have been a few that I've been able, luckily, to see from idea to exit. Those are definitely my favorite ones. That doesn't mean that the ones that we still have that might be struggling or need more help are not as good. But I love them all. I wouldn't have invested in them if I didn't believe in the teams.
Okay. But sometimes things change, and then you still have to allocate your time between all your projects plus new projects. So how do you handle the team you really love, but they don't perform? Let's answer a tough question.
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's like when you have a troubled child, right? It's like you still love them, but you're like, oh, please, no, not again. My day only has so many minutes, right? And I have to allocate them based on, I'll give you as much as you give me. That's what I do. For example, if I'm talking to a CEO and I notice that he's not even listening to what I have to say, then why am I even having a conversation? And I would probably just stop like trying to help. The opposite is true, right? I still do have weekly calls with some of my CEOs. I even did a PowerPoint presentation for one of them once and helped them with their deck and helped him for a pitch presentation that he was doing. If I know that they're taking that advice and appreciating it, I will give them more versus if they're just thinking that it's a waste of their time, it's a waste of my time.
This is really nice. I think it's a very good tip to entrepreneurs, which is take advantage of your investors, but take their feedback seriously, because then they will give you even more.
No.
That's actually a really good way to end our interview, which is ending with a tip for the entrepreneurs. Unless you want to add one more tip.
My last tip on that topic, the way I see investors in the company and the management teams, the relationship is very much like your relationship with your parents. We ask questions and we nag you and we bug you, not because we don't care or because we're like greedy. We really just want what's best for you. I know that's true in my case, right? I'm asking all these questions and really being noisy and asking because I want to help. So sometimes they're like, oh, why are you asking so many questions? Or why do I have to send you this? But I think most investors are the same way, right? We do not make a profit unless you become successful. So it really is like our interests are aligned. So It might not seem like it, but we definitely have the same interest in mind. We want to help you be successful. That way we can be successful.
Very nice. Andrea, as I expected, it was a really fun interview. Thank you for sharing insights and golden nuggets. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I hope that was helpful.